I've actually told some people about how I do this or whatever, and it's always like they look at you like what the hell's going on? How just all this shock,
Yeah.
and then they're like, how the fuck do I do this?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for checking out Real Talk Personal Finance. Shit's about to get real. Cash Flow King with you today. And in today's episode, we have a fucking banger. Even before we record it, I know it's going to be. I'm really, really excited about it. We're going to call it The Secrets of the Overemployed. And we're going to bring in a guest here momentarily, but before we do, just a couple quick announcements. I don't have much for you guys today. First one is, since the last regular show, looks like we picked up 3 new countries, so we're now up to 55 countries listening to the show. We have Cyprus, Honduras, and Turkey are 3 new additions to the list of countries listening to the Real Talk Personal Finance podcast, so we appreciate all of them. And then also, I went through and did the 5 top U.S. cities of all time. I updated that. A lot of them stayed the same, but we did have a couple that got booted out, and we had a couple new ones that came in. So Lakewood, New Jersey, Indianapolis, Indiana, Lexington, Kentucky all stayed, but the 2 new ones that kicked out a couple of the older ones were New York, New York, and Chicago, Illinois. So those are now our current top 5 U.S. cities in terms of all-time listenership, and we appreciate everyone that listens to the show. All right, with all that said, and without further ado, we are going to bring on the show for the very first time one of our premium subscribers for the past 2 months, Cash Flow Rockefeller Prince. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. We're really excited to have you. Cash Flow Rockefeller Prince has been one of our probably most active listeners here as of late. We email a lot back and forth. He became premium. He always gives feedback on the shows, which for any of the listeners that want to do that, realtalkpersonalfinance@gmail.com is how you can get in touch with the show. But we really appreciate him coming in, and he mentioned something in one of his emails about being overemployed. And Cube Crusher and I talked about this on at least probably one, if not more than one show since then. And we started to go down a rabbit hole, and I thought, you know what? He did mention something about possibly coming on the show to talk about this. So what better way than to get the information than to hear it directly from the source? So with that, we're going to get into today's episode. We got a little outline for you guys. We'll run through it. We'll hear some stories. Hopefully we'll have some laughs and figure out what the fuck this overemployed thing is all about. So Cash Flow Rockefeller Prince, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kick it off. What is overemployed?
All right, what is overemployed? So, overemployed at the end of the day is just working multiple jobs at the same time, Monday through Friday.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Now, I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but is it always Monday through Friday? Or, I mean, I'm assuming these are typically like your, I don't know, quote unquote, like white collar type of jobs where they're usually not, it's not like a nights and weekends thing. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's 8 to 5, white collar jobs, laptop based, right? Overemployed is just, it's been lately, from what I've seen, a lot of software engineers do it.
Okay.
Because they're really remote, they're on their laptops. So yeah, it's just pretty much keeping, having 2 jobs at the same time, or 3 or 4, whatever you decide to do with it.
Okay. So for anybody listening that's interested in doing this, it's not like it's going to take up their nights and weekends and they're going to go from whatever their lifestyle is today to no social life. It's, hey, we're going to learn how to juggle within the parameters of a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, quote unquote, normal business hours type of thing.
In essence, it could get a little, once you start doing it, in order to kind of structure your day, and we'll talk through all this, but you might have to wake up earlier, maybe work a little bit later, or later on at night, right, in order so you could kind of get ahead for the week or whatnot.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So overemployed. Why did you decide to do this? Why did you pursue this?
It's a long story. Where can I go with this? But at the end of the day, I was never really good with my finances, and I probably for a whole decade, I would say, I lived paycheck to paycheck. Just never really cared about my finances, and as I started kind of moving along in my career, and I was making good money. I still make good money, but I said to myself, "There's no way in hell, I have all this debt. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Why is this happening?" Right? So I went down like that personal finance rabbit hole. And, once you kind of go through that rabbit hole or whatever, you kind of get into like Dave Ramsey, right? And I started listening to him, and I didn't really feel 100% with him, but I just started kind of following that plan. And I said to myself, man, this shit's going to take forever. So I said to myself, I need a new job. I need to make more money, right? I can cut all this stuff, on my expenses as much as I can, but I need to make more money, right? And I said to myself, should I get a new job? And I was already making pretty good money. So I said, I don't want to give up my job, right? I like what I do. I've been there for a while, right? Like, why would I give that up? So I went online, right, and started Googling, how do I make more money, right? And everyone talks about side hustles, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, so I started going through these side hustles. The first one was like selling stuff online, right? And I was like, no way. Like, so I went around my house and I started finding stuff and I started putting it online, and I was just in shock at the lowball offers that people were giving me where I'm like, fuck this. Like, this extra $20-$30, that's not going to cut it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is this like eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace type of stuff?
Okay. Offer Up, all those places.
Okay.
And I'm like, I said to myself, I was like, I feel like if I sell every single thing in my house, I'm still going to be in debt. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not going to work. So then I was like, all right, go back to the fucking, drawing board. And the second thing was like Uber. So I literally signed up for Uber. I did that for like 2 days, and I said, never again.
Yeah. I drove for a Lyft. It was just for fun, and it was fun for about not long. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So then I said to myself, why don't I just get another job, right? I feel like I can balance some of these things. But I said to myself, the job can't be the same kind of level that I'm at today, right? I don't want that kind of responsibility. But what I need is like $60,000-$80,000 a year, right?
Okay.
And I know how to do that stuff, right? I've worked through that corporate structure, right? So I said, maybe I could just get a second job, right? And then the rest is history.
Oh boy! All right. So it was out of necessity, essentially, given your situation. It was, I need more than the Uber and the Facebook Marketplace, eBay bullshit. Like, I need to actually get some money in the door. And you realize that, like a lot of people do, that it's more of, I mean, you can only cut your expenses so much, but then it becomes an income challenge, right?
Right, exactly.
And so you needed to bring in meaningful dollars through the door. And in your case, that was through job number 2, or as some people like to say, J2.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to read something real quick, and we're going to come back to this. But I was poking around before the show on Reddit, and I went to, I guess there's this thread called Overemployed. There's probably multiple on there. And this was posted about 18 hours ago from the time of this recording. And the title of it is, Nobody Should Feel Bad About OE, which overemployed. This person says, if employers paid a great salary, had great benefits, I liked my coworkers and boss, believed in mission of the company, and I had job security with RSUs, restricted stock units, LTIP, long-term incentive plan, great 401k match, and a really generous severance plan, if let go, I would never OE. Too much risk if caught. Plus, I would feel bad. My J1 paid crap, so took J2 that only paid slightly more. If J1 did not lowball, I never would have done OE. And then there's a whole bunch of additional follow-up posts. But it seems like the experience, and I'm not saying that your J1 didn't do any of those things, it was an income thing, but it seems like the overwhelming motivating factor for pretty much anybody is income. We want / need / desire to bring more money in. Would you say that's fair for most people?
Definitely fair. And just to touch on your point, right? Well, what's it called? So there's a big debate with people on whether this is morally right or ethically right, right? Because your J1, right, it pays you for 40 hours a week, in essence, right? A salary.
Right.
So a lot of people have a lot of issues with, having a J2 or J3. And that's something we're going to touch on later, but it's a big kind of debate. I even heard people call it as like job polygamy.
Yeah.
Where you have multiple wives,
Right. Well, I mean, so, yeah, because the thinking is that your employer, for lack of a better phrase, quote unquote, owns you for those 40 hours, and that if you're ostensibly able to do multiple jobs within maybe not necessarily 40 hours, but maybe slightly more than that. But the reality is, if you actually dissected the hours in the week, maybe we didn't spend 40 actual hours working at a particular job. But if you still have the same productivity, the counter argument to that would be, well, I still got my job done. Who cares if I didn't do it in 40 hours if it only takes me 20 hours or 25? I'm just making that up. I don't know. But is that kind of the logic?
Yeah, pretty much. And that's kind of how I view it. At the end of the day, in my opinion, employers are not loyal to people. So you need to do whatever you need to do that's right for you. And they'll let you go whenever they want to let you go, right?
Right.
And my job, like my J1, I have some flexibility there. I love my J1. And I can do that stuff in like 20 hours, right? 20, 30 hours, whatever, sometimes less. But
yeah.
So it works for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And I think, I mean, one way, I guess, for somebody to think about it would be, well, if you're going to get your job done in 20 or 25 hours, but they're paying you for 40, then what's the difference between looking busy and dicking around on your computer or your phone or whatever versus actually getting a J2 and making some money, right? I mean, you're essentially still, quote unquote, wasting time. Some people would argue, oh, you're stealing time. But like, they have a job that they hired you to do, which presumably would take 40 hours. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And they're not going to go, assuming if somebody's on a salary, well, good for them. If it takes them 50 hours, they're not paying them more, right? Unless it's like incentive pay. So if you can do it in fewer hours, then all the better for that individual person, right? All the much better for you. So,
and at the end of the day, I think it's also the employer's problem in essence, right? If you've you're paying someone a salary for 40 hours to do a certain job, and it only takes them 10, then shame on you as an employer.
Yep.
Right? You need to give some other kind of work or something, right? So yeah.
So here's a question, and we might get into this a little bit later, but if a person has J1 and it actually does take them 40 hours a week to do that, is this overemployed thing still feasible for them, assuming they don't want to work 80 plus hours a week? Or are we, and I might be jumping the gun here, but like, are we looking for or targeting positions where there is flexibility and those positions and the tasks at hand can be done in fewer than 40 hours?
It's very different for everybody. I still think it's possible. In my life, what I target for is I want to be an individual contributor. No meetings. I don't want to fucking attend one meeting. I have enough meetings with, J1. Mm-hmm. So I kind of look for things that kind of revolve around that. But even let's say you're working a 40-hour work week and you're just slammed, I still think it's possible because you never know that J2. You could look for things where you could say to yourself, I can do this shit in 10 hours, right? Mm-hmm. And that's very, very, and that stuff is out there and it's possible.
All right, well, that leads us into the third part of this outline here. How do you find a second job?
All right, that's a good question. So, a couple ways, right? It's like finding a J1, right? It's all the same job boards. But there's certain things you need to do before you start like applying, right? First things first, if you have a LinkedIn profile, deactivate it. right? Nobody needs to know any of your current job history, right? If you don't want to deactivate it, and I personally didn't deactivate mine, just literally erase everything, like all your work history, and just keep your picture up, right? Because you want to stay really, really, kind of private about all this, right? You don't want anyone to know your work history.
Okay.
Then the second thing I would do is your resume. So if you have a current resume, right, you're probably going to have your current job on there. You need to delete that. And in my case, right, where I kind of struggled was just the level of my career path, right, and my last job, right, it's a high level, right? And I said to myself, I don't want to be that level, right? I want something that started like 10 years ago, you know what I mean? That kind of level. So I'm like, okay. And I started applying, right? And I was getting nothing, right? Because everyone's scared, right? Everyone's scared. Like, why would you hire someone with this kind of level to do this kind of job, right? So I had to dumb down my resume.
That's what I was going to ask you. I didn't know how to say it. I was like to say, did you have to dumb it down? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you have to dumb it down. And that's how it worked for me, right? I don't know what anyone's, career paths or what their certain titles are. I left the titles, right, but I kind of dumbed down the
role.
The role, right, and what I did there.
Okay.
What's going to happen, right? So once you do that, and then I started getting calls, right? But the next thing that I experienced, right, and I knew that was going to come, but I think I had a gap of like 4 years between, when I applied and the last job that I had on that resume. So these HR people, right, are going to start asking you, and managers, right, what the hell happened in these 4 years? So you need to have your reasons, whatever they are, and I've created some good ones.
Yeah, let's hear them. What would you come up with?
Oh Lord, I ran. Well, the most professional HR probably accepted reason is this should do is just say I've had a life event happen where I no longer need to kind of pursue that corporate ladder, and I no longer I want a job where I kind of have lower responsibilities, right?
So pretty much, I came into some money, essentially, without saying it. Yeah, okay.
And if they press, right? I mean, I come up with shit on the fly, and I've had people press. I said, "Oh, I had an uncle pass away," blah blah blah, that whole thing.
Yep.
I've used, I just wanted to raise my children, and I don't have children.
Oh gosh.
And now now they're in school, blah blah blah, right?
Did that ever bite you in the ass? Did that ever come back, like you get hired by one of these places and they're like, oh yeah, let me see a picture of your kids, and you're like, what kids?
Well, I have some friends who have kids, so if that came around, I would probably show up a picture
wow.
of my friends' kids.
This is really balls deep in this thing. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So that's how you find a second job, right? You have to have your LinkedIn profile. I would either deactivate it or really delete it, and then update your resume so you don't have your current job on there. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, did anybody ever give you any pushback with regard to LinkedIn and say, hey, I noticed you have a LinkedIn profile, but why don't you have anything listed on it, or why don't you have your previous work history on there?
No, I've had my coworkers from J1 being like, hey, what's up with your LinkedIn? There's nothing there. And I said, oh, I somehow accidentally deleted it. I have to update it.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the only thing that's ever happened. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you go through, I guess, a similar process as J1 to get your J2 or J whatever the number is. You're interviewing, you're dumbing things down, you're looking for stuff with no meetings. Your LinkedIn profile is pretty much picture only. If anybody asks anything, it's, hey, had a life event. That's, the reason for the gap, or that's one of the reasons it was used. All right. So anything else people should know about this part?
When you find the second job, right? Like I said, you have to make it work for you. So if your J1 is meetings, right? Or you're heavy in Excel or something, I don't know, right? And J2, like, you have to look for something that's not going to take up as much time as your J1 if you're really, really busy, J1. It just has to work for your life, I guess. And you'll kind of know what that is. It's very different for everyone. For me, the way it works is, right, my J2, I need to be an individual person, right? I don't want to work in your groups. I don't care for your groups. You know what I mean? And I just want to have projects, weekly stuff to do, daily stuff to do, whatever it is, and I'll get it done. So yeah, you just have to kind of find that, and you never really know, until you actually get there.
I was gonna say, do you ever get sucked into that where you're like, all right, I don't want to be on part of your teams, I don't want to be in these fucking meetings, give me my shit to do, and they're like, oh, you're doing great, and we're gonna pull you into this, bullshit and whatever.
Oh, fuck yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god, I can't even explain to you. So at one point, I had 3 J's. Okay.
All right. Is that the max you've ever had? 3?
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm really good with Excel, and I can build things pretty quickly in macros and stuff like that. But I had this one J where it was literally all Excel work, and it was very mundane. It was just the same clicks over and over again, right? And that's just an easy macro, right? You got to cut this, paste this, blah blah blah, right?
Yep.
And I was actually creating K1s, but so I created this macro, right? And I would get these K1s out so quick, right? And this manager's like, how do you do this? And I'm like, oh, I created this macro. And she's like, whoa, I need you to tell everyone how to do this. So then I had to be in these meetings with, like 8 other people in there, and I'm showing how to build it, and then I became like the macro guy, you know what I mean? And they're all calling me, my macro fucking broke, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't have fucking time for all this bullshit.
I'm on J3, damn it.
Right. I've had one manager, oh my God, it was a nightmare. She had a team meeting. I knew it was going to be part of a team, but we're all like individual. But she had a team meeting every day at 8 a.m.
Ugh.
Every day, right? And I got to the point where I'm like, fuck it. I'm not even joining these meetings anymore. I don't give a fuck. This is so stupid.
Now, when you did that, though, were you prepared if they decided?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, for sure. And she called me, why are you not in the meeting? Blah, blah, blah. And I told her, I said, and this is, you kind of have a lot more balls when you obviously have a J1.
Right,
but,
right.
I said, because the meeting is pointless, right? There's no reason why we need to speak every day. You know what I mean? And she was just kind of in shock that I told her that. And it's kind of a longer story, but she got one of her, like there was another manager there that people were kind of very scared of. So one day she called me, and then that other manager came on, and they were telling me that, or the manager that everyone was scared of, was telling me how she's here because she heard that what I said to her, and she's here to, do a conflict resolution or something, right? So it's like an ambush.
Corporate bullshit, yeah.
Well, and I've been in corporate for a while, and I have a pretty high role, so I know conflict resolution. And I just stopped her right in her fucking tracks, and I said, this is not how you resolve conflict. You've already heard one side, right? Now you want to hear my side, but you have the person that I have a conflict with listening in. What if she's the problem? What if she's saying something discriminatory against me or sexually harassing? And then that's when they both got like really, shocked, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" And then they're like, "Okay, we'll talk to you later." Like, all right.
That's great. That's funny. Yeah. So did that ever go anywhere? Like, did they pick it up later, or they just said, "We're going to leave them the fuck alone. You don't have to come to the 8 o'clock meeting anymore"?
Well, she changed it to once a week.
Okay. Right.
Which is the normal thing to do.
Right.
And plus, I didn't have time to come to her meeting. I had fucking 2 other jobs to get to.
That's great. All right. So rules you need to go by when being overemployed. You got several of these.
Yeah.
And we're violating one of them right now.
Right. So I sound like a hypocrite because I'm completely breaking it. Rule number 1 is you don't talk about it. It's like Fight Club.
Yep.
If you've never seen that movie, I would watch it, but you don't talk about this job to anybody. I've obviously breaking that rule now, but I've also told my friends, certain friends, right, my most trustworthy, and family, because at the end of the day, and it's kind of what we talked about earlier. Some people can be very funny with this, right? They can be it's like, they think it's morally wrong or whatever. Like I've seen on that Reddit post, I've seen a guy who posted on there like saying that, he worked with this one coworker for like 10 years, knows his children, blah, 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 that whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that coworker, was always complaining about money, blah, blah, blah. And this coworker had a J2. So he told him, like, you should get a J2. Then all of a sudden, a couple weeks goes by, and I'm guessing he probably worked at a smaller company. He gets called into HR, and they're like, do you have a second job?
Ugh.
Right? And he's like, yes, I do. Right? And they fired him, right? And they told him too, like, who, reported him, right? Which is fucking stupid. But,
yeah.
So then he confronted that guy, right? And the guy goes, well, I just think it's morally wrong that you're doing this, and I know you're a great guy, and you shouldn't be doing it like this, blah, 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 right? Which I think is bullshit, but that's why you shouldn't tell anyone. Right?
So he tells his broke friend about it to help him out, and then the friend basically turns on him?
Yeah. Oh. Then I've seen on the message board, this one's interesting, someone said, help, HR found out about my J2. Yeah. How did they know? And I responded to him and I said, did you tell anyone? And I'm shocked he actually responded to me saying, the only person I told was my cousin. And I responded back saying, you need to have a conversation with your cousin.
Yeah, no shit.
And he responded back saying, yeah, my cousin told on me. And I've thought about this, like, how does someone, like a cousin, right, that doesn't work at J1, right? How do they know? Mm-hmm. Depending on the size of the company, right? There's these hotlines you can call in, and HR has to investigate anything that comes in through those hotlines, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, do not talk to anyone about it. Only your most trusted circles. That's rule number 1.
Yeah. No, I get freaked out about it. We talked a little bit before the show about, how I have a code name on here and everybody that comes on here just to have fun, but also just to remain anonymous is we go by code names. And one of the reasons I do that is for my position. But there's people that I know in my personal life that listen to the show. And, that's something I think about from time to time is what if somebody actually went to my employer and said, hey, did you know who the Cash Flow King is? Did you know so-and-so has this podcast? So again, another reason I never actually go by my real name on here, but
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. Rule number 2, fuck the benefits.
Yeah. There's an asterisk here. Tell me more.
Right. So, it's a J2 is like a J1, right? There's going to be benefits. A J3 is just like J2, J1. There's going to be benefits, right? You always have to remember rule number 1. You don't want to get caught, right? So what I've seen, right, you don't want to end up on a list somewhere. So if you sign up for like life insurance or something in J1 and you sign up for it in J2 and they use the same provider,
yep.
You don't know who's out there in that provider's world that's cross-referencing things, checking things out, right? So I just would not sign up for any of their benefits. Same with insurances, right? You don't want to end up on some kind of list. Even payroll is a risk, right?
Yeah.
Because there's one payroll provider that pretty much handles every single one, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you've just put in your social security number, right? And you never know what they do with that information. They could cross-reference things, right? So you are potentially risking J1, right, by doing that, but just by even having a J2 because of the payroll provider. But I've had like 7 of these J's, mm-hmm. And it hasn't happened to me, but you never know. And I put a little asterisk there, is the 401k.
Yeah, okay. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so the 401k, I've personally signed up for all of them because I've been really, really lucky. They don't use the provider that my J1 has. They have some other kind of servicer like a Schwab, and
If they did use the same ones, would you not sign up for that reason?
I mean, I did.
Okay.
like when I log into my account, I see like my multiple jobs.
Oh, nice.
And I've asked the service provider, I've asked, how do I get rid of it? Because I rolled them over and stuff. I'm like, how do I get rid of that? And they're like, oh, it'll somehow drop off over time or something like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay. But I mean, simultaneously, you're not using it. Let's say when you had 3 jobs, right? There was never a point where 2 of the employers both used the same provider while you were actively working for both employers.
For 401k?
Yeah.
There has, and I have used it.
Okay, that has happened.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. The 401k I feel is like a little bit less risk. Where I think like you really run into things is insurances. Because there's some employers require you to not drug tests, but like a blood test. Like I just feel like there's more
Shit that can happen.
Yeah.
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 Okay. All right.
Especially if you sign up for like a life insurance, right? Like you have a $500,000 policy here and $500,000 there, and it's the same provider, and they're like, but you're paying 2 different rates. You know what I mean? Like, stuff can just pop up.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I would forget all their benefits. I would not even touch them. I wouldn't even look at them, because at the end of the day, you don't really need their benefits. You're here. My goal, right, is I needed to get out of debt. I needed to make money. I don't want to become any of your friends at work. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I know I sound very crude and like mean, I guess, or whatever.
No, it's discipline.
It's just what it is, right? So yeah.
Okay. Now, has there ever been, and I'm probably jumping the gun, I think you have some of this is way down on the list, so we can come back to this if you want, but I'm just thinking about like the structure of working for that organization. In other words, W-2 versus independent contractor, that type of thing. You want to get to that later, or should we segue now?
Let's segue into that now. So,
okay.
So I actually personally, I've had both.
Okay.
I prefer the contractor route.
Yeah.
Because it's so much more easier. You still get benefits as contractors, right? But I prefer the contract route because it's a 3-month commitment. Sometimes they extend it. I've done a 30-day contract. I'm actually in a contract right now that's being extended all the way till December. And it gets a little bit trickier because sometimes you can be a contractor on a W-2 and sometimes you can be a contractor on a 1099. If you're ever going to be a contractor on a 1099, I've done both, the rate you ask needs to be really, just bump it up, like
right.
40%, right, for tax and all that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
I personally prefer the contracting route.
Okay. All right. List of excuses. The shit's about to get wild.
Yeah, so, and this is different for everyone, but everyone's, their main job, right, their J1, shit hits the fan sometimes, right? People are going to be calling you. They have questions, right? J2 is no different than that, right? People are going to be calling you. They're going to have questions. I mean, I've personally been on like a conference call on J1, right? And I have a manager calling me on J2, and I had to make a split decision, right? And I'm not speaking. I'm just listening on J1, right? And I had to make a split decision.
Right.
Should I answer J2, right? And I said, fuck it. So I just closed the laptop.
That's
right. So yeah, I mean, things you need to have, and then that manager, right, the one that I hung up on, she goes, "What happened? Where are you?" Right? I've had some serious micromanagers, right? What's going on? So have your list, and your list of reasons of what happened. I've had, I said my internet's went down, right? I've had a delivery for, my new washer and dryer, new microwave, UPS is at the door, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just have your list of reasons of why you can't speak to someone or why you can't get something done on time or whatever. Have just your list of reasons.
So when you say manager 2 was calling you and you closed the laptop, are you saying they were like calling you through like Teams or something like that?
Teams. Yeah.
Okay.
They're calling me through Teams.
I gotcha.
And I mean, this manager, she was just micromanager to the extreme. So I had to close the laptop on her multiple times.
And you're on the conference call on your phone?
I'm on the conference call on my laptop at J1.
Oh, I see. So you got multiple laptops running.
Oh yeah, I've had 3 laptops at the same time running.
This is fucking great. That's great.
I've had 3, and I travel. I travel for work. Not as much as I used to. A little bit now. And when I had 3 J's at the same fucking time, right? And I had to travel for J1, I said to myself, "Oh shit, how am I going to pull this off?"
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, "Fuck it, I'm bringing all 3 laptops with me. Let's see how this works out."
Oh boy.
And and it's international travel, so I'm like, all right, I got an 8-hour head start, right? So I'm going to use this to my advantage. But you go through TSA, right?
Yeah.
And you're pulling out 3 fucking laptops. Everyone's looking at you like, what is going on here? Right? Why does this guy have 3 laptops? Right? It's 1 laptop per bin, and then your shoes and all that. And I'm holding up the line, and I'll never forget this one TSA guy goes, "What is going on here? Why do you have 3 fucking laptops?" And I go, I'm very, very busy,
Did they ever like suspect anything? I mean, not overemployed, but like that something wasn't right. Like, do you ever get pulled out of line for that, and they screen you additional screening or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll never forget that TSA line. Like,
That's funny.
because like usually I go behind. If I'm in a hurry, right? I'll try to pick a person where I'll see, okay, they'll be kind of quick, you know what I mean, in that TSA line.
Yeah.
And I'll just never forget the people looking at me because I had all my laptops. I had my iPad, because I like to listen to my iPad, when I'm on the flight.
Oh, man.
And it's one bin for every device, right? And then,
That's
my
awesome.
carry-on bag, my backpack, just all this stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so you got to have your list of excuses ready, and then you have something on here about getting your technology right. So how does that tie in all these laptops?
So when I wrote "Get Your Technology Right," it's just one thing. So at the end of the day, you might find this funny, but there's something called a mouse jiggler.
All right.
So what it is, it's just like a device that keeps your mouse constantly moving, right? So when you're in these, when you have a J1, J2, J3, right? And you're just working on J1, make sure you have your mouse jiggler on for J2, J3, because the mouse is always moving.
Right.
So it always looks like you're online, right?
Gotcha.
And that will save you, because some of these, you never know, right? When you get a J2, it's not even sometimes about the job, right? It's about the people, right? And your manager. And they could be monitored. They monitor that stuff. It's kind of crazy. I personally don't with my team because I care less. But some people are just like that.
And for those that may not be familiar, this is one reason that I actually close it out, because we use Teams. And if you leave it up all day, which some places might require you to do, I don't know, but you can see if somebody's busy, like in a meeting, or inactive or active. And so the mouse jiggler you're talking about is basically to essentially trick your device / everybody you work with into thinking that you're actually on there working or doing whatever. You haven't just stepped away for 4 hours because you're working on another J.
Exactly. Yeah. And whatever mouse jiggler you get, don't actually connect it to your laptop. Because depending on the company, right, the bigger the company, right, they can see what you connect. So buy something where you could connect it to your own personal devices or whatever, like your own personal USB port or something like that.
You need to come up with this would be awesome, like a you probably don't have time for this, I guess, but like a cheat sheet for anyone that's interested in Overemployed. We'll only make it available to premium subscribers, right? We'll get you to sign up for like Amazon affiliate links or whatever, and like anything that you think people should get, we'll just link it up in the document, and anybody that becomes premium, will make that an automatic giveaway or something. That's pretty fucking cool. I mean, I never would have thought about that. I understand the whole thing about the USB and them tracking that, but then it's like, okay, well, then what do I actually get? So you're saying you're going to have a personal device, plug it into your personal device, put it on the mouse that you're using for work, and there's just no way they're going to know.
Correct. Like I have like a USB port that's just connected to an outlet, right? And I have this mouse jiggler. and I just connect that to the port that's connected to my outlet at my home or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have to connect it to the actual laptop.
That's great. So how many
And
mouse jigglers do you
I
have?
live-
Just one?
I have two.
Two? That's awesome. Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. I even have videos of me. I've sent it to some of my friends where I have literally 3 conference calls at the same time.
Yeah. That's great.
And I'm literally just panning around, my office desk here at home, like, there's all these Teams meetings everywhere.
Do you ever feel like you get behind? Like you can use the mouse jiggler to feel like, okay, well, I'm going to look like I'm active. I'm going to look like I'm busy and paying attention. But you ever get caught with your pants down?
No, that's never happened to me. The worst is when you have a J2 or a J3 that requires you to be on camera for calls.
Yeah.
Because I've in my regular job I could be on camera or off camera.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on the meeting, sometimes I have to be on camera.
Right.
And that's when things get really tricky, especially if I have 2 meetings at the same time, right? And that's happened countless times, right? And literally you'll see me on J1, right? And I'm looking straight into the camera. And if you turn your head a little bit to the right, J2, you see my head like, off to the side.
That's fucking great.
Because
That's
in J1, I'm actually leading a meeting, right? And in J2, all I have to do is listen. And I kind of structure the camera so they can't see my mouth. You know what I mean?
Right. But do you, so what, you just have the other one muted then, I'm assuming, if you're leading a meeting?
Yeah.
Oh,
quiet,
man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. How many J's are you working while we're doing this podcast right now?
0.
That's great. All right. Stick to your reason of why you are doing this.
All right. So what was I even trying to say with this one? At the end of the day, right, money's going to be piling in, right? Especially when you have 3 J's, right, at the same time, or even 4. Like when I had 3 J's, I was getting paid every week, sometimes twice a week, right, depending on the payroll calendars.
Yep.
So money is just flowing in, right? So always make sure you know what your goal is. That doesn't mean, you shouldn't have some fun. I obviously had fun. And I would, honestly, and if you, at this, economic climate or whatever, if you can land 3 J's, I mean, that's a blessing. So I personally do something, I call it, in my budget, I like to budget now, I call it bless up.
All right.
So what I like to do is twice a month, right? I go to a gas station and I just go to a random person. I see kind of a car that, maybe it's a little rusted or something, right? And I just go up to the person and I say, can I pay for your gas? And they look at you usually like, get the fuck away from me. And then they say, okay, and then you hear a story about maybe how it's helping them, blah, blah, blah. And I do it for 2 reasons, right? It's self-serving, right? I like feeling good about it. And 2, I feel blessed that I'm able to do this.
Yeah.
And the money's just rolling in like that. And it's kind of changed a lot of things for me. And just my outlook and stuff. But I hope maybe one day if their, situation gets different in life, that they'll do that to someone, right? Maybe they'll think about me later on in life.
I really, really like that. Like that's going to be I actually wrote that down. I'm taking notes as we're going here. And that's going to be one of my takeaways. That just sounds like a really cool thing to be able to do.
It's great because people just start talking and they thank you and they just say whatever's going on in their life. Like, this is going to help me for the week. I've had all these crazy things, blah, blah, blah.
Maybe I will do that. Bless up. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's self-serving, right? It makes me feel good. But I do hope that someone later on, maybe their situation changes in life, right? And they think about that moment and it maybe help them. And then they start doing that. Maybe that's a way we put some good in this world. I don't know.
No, that's great. I love it.
All right. The next thing. So we're done with the rules. All right. So a suggestion is, so just like any job, right? You're going to have a week of training, or maybe 2 weeks. Who knows, right? Mm-hmm. Especially once it's your first J2, I would highly recommend taking the first couple days off your J1, just so you can get an understanding of what you need to do. From my experience, because I've had a lot of J2s, usually that first week you don't do shit. It's always like you're trying to set up your laptop, get access to all the systems. So usually that second week when you sit down with your manager and they kind of tell you, all right, this is what we need you to do. So I just recommend, taking some time off your J1 in order to kind of just feel more comfortable that you're going to have a J2 and this is your life now.
Right. Okay. So what that leads into the average day, average week. What's that look like?
So for me, it's a 40-hour work week. I am able to pretty much get everything done in time. Once you start working these like a J2, you're going to know exactly what you need to do every day or every week or whatever, right? There will be times, right, where just to get ahead, you might want to wake up a little bit earlier, maybe like 2 hours earlier, I don't know, and just knock out some work. And I've done that in the past. And I'm pretty much an early riser. So I've been on the J2 laptop and pure quiet, right, for 2 hours. Those 2 hours is like 3 days of work.
Yeah, it's fucking magic tricks. You ever read the book or hear about the book Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod?
No.
It's excellent. It's a great read for anybody that's listening. I need to reread that myself. I've read it a couple different times, but it's all about, it's not so much about overemployed or J1, 2, 3 type of shit, but just about the power of being up early and what that can do to jumpstart your day,
Yeah, it's crazy. Especially when it's just nice and quiet. No one's bothering you. Not J1, right? No crazy managers in J2 or something, right? You can get a lot done.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But overall, so did the number of hours change for you? Like, for example, when you went and had 2 Js versus 3 Js when you first started doing this versus after you had been doing it for a while, did that structure in terms of the average day or week ever change in terms of number of hours or what you did or anything like that?
It has. So some of the Js, they wanted me to work overtime. Right?
Okay, all right.
And I'm like, I don't want to fucking work your overtime. But I did, right? So that maybe when it kind of changed for me, just more hours. But once you kind of just start, getting in the flow with what you need to do in the J2, it's just like whatever anyone's listening out there, right? Just imagine your J1. You know that thing left and right, right? You know exactly what you need to do. A J2 is exactly that. Right, so you just somehow balance the two nicely, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay, but like you wouldn't recommend somebody if somebody's listening to this and they don't have any J's right now, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, I don't know, but you probably wouldn't recommend starting 2 brand new J's at the same time because you don't know what the hell you're getting into yet, right?
Right. I would do 1 J at a time, and me personally, right, I constantly look for other J's. Not constantly, but like once a week, right? Especially now because I like to do the contracts and I know they're going to be over.
Okay.
So they overlap a lot, right? This stuff.
Okay.
So I always have something going on, right? Because especially in this environment, right? It's hard to find a job now. And I must have been living under a rock because I've had all these fucking J's. But, but apparently it's taken a really long time for people to find work, especially if they're unemployed or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's just taken a really long time, more than normal. So, I mean, I personally constantly, but like once a week, I'll go on the job boards and, find a job, right? Or
now, I don't personally believe this, but I'm going to ask this question, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the whole morals around this and ethics. Has anybody ever said to you or suggested that, like, hey, by you having multiple jobs, you're, in your case, you were using it to pay off some debt. Maybe some people are using it to do that or invest more and get ahead or whatever. Has anybody ever said like, hey, you're taking that J2 or J3 of yours is taking away from that one person that needs the J1 in the first place to survive? Like, has anybody ever said that?
No, but that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way.
And I don't personally like necessarily believe or think that. I'm just thinking of, off the top of my head here, like, how some people are going to, it'll be interesting to see if we get any feedback. And by the way, to the listeners, realtalkpersonalfinance@gmail.com, or click on the link that says Text the Cash Flow King and it'll come to the show. But I'm sure we'll get some feedback on this episode one way or the other. And certain people are going to be like, dude, this is fucking awesome. I need to do this. And like other people might be like, well, holy shit, like this guy is doing just fine and he's looking for new J's every week. Like what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how how that's perceived.
So I'll tell you how it's perceived. I have a buddy, trusted friend. He's a physician, right? And I told him about this, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, and then he asked me how much money I make, right? Mm-hmm. And I told him, and he's like, you're telling me I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the emergency room so people can throw up on me, and I'm only making like $50,000 more than you, while you're sitting there with a fucking mouse jiggler? And I go, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh man.
Right. So I mean, it all depends on people, right? But it is what it is.
Are you guys still good friends?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's funny.
He's like, I went through, 4 years of medical school, like 5 years of residency, whatever the hell he did. He's like, and you're just sitting there at home, sometimes going into an office twice a week.
Yeah, I'm like, yep. This is kind of a tangent, but there's a game out there. It's a board game. It's the Cash Flow board game by Robert Kiyosaki. You know who Robert is? Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
So have you ever played that game?
No.
So the way that the game works is it's kind of like Monopoly, only I think it's a little bit better. And they have a couple different versions of it, but this is like the OG version, like the original way back in the day. At this point, it's probably definitely well over 10 years old, maybe even as much as 20 years old. And the way that it works is you start off in this rat race, right, where you're just going around this fucking hamster wheel, and everybody gets to pick a card. So there'll be the person that's the janitor, there'll be the person that's the nurse or the doctor. This is what made me think of this when you were talking about your buddy. And everybody pulls a card out, and it's like, this is your life and how your finances start, and you need to get out of the rat race. And so what you'll find a lot of times is that the person that's the doctor or the lawyer or whatever that has like that, quote unquote big job, they're also the ones a lot of times that have a lot of debt and a lot of obligations and a lot of payments to make. And then you have the janitor that doesn't necessarily make as much money, but maybe they didn't go to college and maybe they don't have a student loan payment and maybe this and that. And the idea is to try to get out of the rat race by building up passive income sources so that you can get out onto what they call the fast track, and then the game kind of takes off from there. But most of the game, like most of our lives, are spent trying to get out of this rat race. And the reason I bring all this up is that there's this, I think a lot of people more and more now are starting to question whether or not, from a financial standpoint, it's quote unquote worth it. Because when people play that game, like when I first played that game, I pulled the doctor card and I'm like, oh, this is going to be fucking easy. I was stuck in that rat race the entire game. Somebody else, the next time I play, I pull out the janitor card. I'm like, this is easy. I'm going to do this. And before you know it, I was out of there. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that, that's going to work that way for everybody, but it is interesting to see that a lot of times, and again, this is probably way off on a tangent, but people grow up and think, well, maybe my parents thought that I should have been a doctor, or I should have been a lawyer, or I should have been, I'm not saying me personally, just like that person generally speaking. And sometimes people feel bad about that, but it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you got your own plumbing business. What do you mean? You're an electrician. Yeah. You're killing it, And so I think we all need to, in some way, shape, or form, question what, that might look like. And that's probably a topic for another show, another day. But it's just really interesting to me. So anyway, I guess my point is that when you said that about him and doing all that work and going into medical school and residency and all that stuff, and he's only making marginally more, and I don't know anything about him personally, but like there's a lot of people where that probably applies. And on the outside, to the person that pulls up next to them at, God forbid, Circle K or Costco or whatever, right? And who knows what kind of fancy car they're driving. Maybe they got a nice house, maybe this, maybe that. But at the same time, you got the guy over there in the old pickup truck that's just crushing it. And sometimes looks, I guess, can be deceiving, and I don't really know where I was going with this other than you mentioning your buddy who's a doctor made me think of the cash flow game. And I brought the cash flow game up to say that, like, sometimes the positions and professions that you would least expect to be lucrative and allow people to become free are the ones that actually do.
That's very, very true. At the end of the day, it's what you make out of your own life, right? But yeah, no, I hear you. I've even had a friend, it was him and his wife. and I told them that I'm doing this, right? And then I told them how much money I'm making, right? And his wife was like, "Go get a fucking second job tomorrow. You need to go." She got all mad at him. She's like, "What the hell? Why are you not doing this?"
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, and you've alluded to it a couple times. I don't know if I want to put you on the spot, but we kind of did. For anyone that's paying attention, we did do a show about you not too long ago because you wrote into the show. Share, if you don't mind, share with the listeners, for those that are too lazy to go back and listen to it, might have missed it. How much money can somebody make doing this?
It could be up to 200, 300. I mean, it depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
Depends on the job. So me personally, I made last year well over 300.
Wow.
So, it could be nice.
Yeah, that's some nice bless up money, huh?
Right.
That's good. That's good.
And and I don't live like just like trying to pay down debt. I mean, I've traveled all over the world, vacations and stuff, and friends and family. And
do you do points and miles?
I don't. I listened to your show on points and miles. I find it complicated, like which cards you need to get. And
it can be.
I should be doing it.
Did you listen to the one with the Travel Queen? I think it was like episode 8. Okay. I was going to say, definitely start there. There's some good ones in there. I try to keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there way better at it than me. But I used to think it was bullshit, but it's pretty cool. Now, going back to the 300 plus or whatever, is that from, how many J's was that? 2?
Probably 2 J's.
2 J's. Okay. And now, how many J's do you have now?
I have 2 now.
You have 2. Okay. All right. And you're still looking for
cash flow. Rockefeller Prince does well.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. So and you're still looking once a week for additional J's or additional contracts or whatever. Okay.
My thing right now is just contracts. I like them. I like that it's a shorter time commitment. I like that. So when you have a J, an actual J1, or a J2, J3, an actual W2 full benefits J, people are going to want to get to know you, right? I have one of those where people can know me all day long for all they care, right? I'm here to kind of just collect the paychecks and bounce, right? I don't want to get to know you, and I will, right? I'm not a horrible person, but I just don't need that.
You don't want multiple scenarios like with the primary J.
Yeah.
Because eventually you're going to step on yourself somewhere, or maybe not you, because you seem like you're pretty good at this, but most people, I probably would, where I'd screw something up somewhere along the line and be like, well, fuck, yeah, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So what type of jobs or industries does this work best in?
It's a great question. I don't even know why I put that in there. I would just recommend, so the J's that I have, and I don't want to get too specific with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I literally do things that I don't do in my J1. But my J1, the skill sets is really transferable. So I literally have done jobs, right? Like a J2 that I had. Do you remember COVID?
Mm-hmm.
So the government gave out a bunch of money to the states, right?
Okay.
And the states decided this is what I want to do with the money. And a lot of states, and I worked for a certain state where they were giving money out for people to pay their rent, right? Just like every state, they're run by idiots. And and there's a lot of fraud going on, right?
Yep.
So the state paid me to kind of review these applications, right? And it's something, I guess what I'm trying to say is like that has nothing to do with my J1 reviewing like applications and stuff, right? So it can, there's no real like, this is the type of industry you need to be in or work best. Where, I guess, like the real thing that you should look for, and it's very, very difficult, especially nowadays, is remote. Your J2, J3 has to be remote. I've tried the fucking 2 J's. We're gonna make my J1 and then J2 both being hybrid. It's a nightmare. it's a nightmare.
What about J1? Can J1 be? I mean, J1 has to at least be hybrid, right, to allow for this. Okay.
So my J1 is hybrid, right?
Okay.
And I've had a J2 where it started out as remote, and then they're like, "Oh, just kidding, we need you in here 2 days a week," and it worked out nicely, right? Where they were like, "You can pick whatever 2 days," but in my J1, I'm blessed with an office, right? I have an actual office where I can keep the door closed. You could kind of hide the fucking laptops, you know what I mean?
Wait, you ever bring your J2 laptop into your J1 office?
Every week.
Oh my goodness, that's ballsy right there.
Every week I bring it in there. Are you kidding me? But no one's going to question it, right? But when in your J2, right, it's more, you're going to probably, especially the roles that I'm looking for, right, you're in a fucking cube, right? And you have all the people walking around, and, there's not a lot of space, and, you could be on 2 meetings, right? Like, it's not going to look good. So remote, that's the key.
So fully remote J2, J3, and hybrid J1.
Yeah, that's what's worked for me. If you can somehow do hybrid J1, J2, good for you, but that will not work.
And then obviously if somebody can do fully remote for J1, 2, and 3 or whatever, then that's even better.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's just nowadays it's very hard to find fully remote, which pisses me off. But
do you think employers know this goes on?
Maybe. I don't know. I know that I can tell you on my team, I've walked, where my team sits and stuff. I've seen a certain individual with 2 laptops, and I know she has a second job, right? And I don't give a shit, right? I just want to talk to her and be like, "Hey, me too,"
Right.
But whatever whatever her reasons are, by all means, right? Because at the end of the day, these employers, I mean, they don't give a shit about you, right? As crude as it sounds, right? But they, if you need to be let go in order for a company to make, their numbers or whatnot, it's going to happen. Doesn't matter if you've been there a year, 20 years. So you need to do what you need to do.
No, I agree with that. I used to run this networking group back in the day, and there was a guy there who was an executive, and basically there was me and this other guy. One guy was a franchise broker. He was trying to sell them franchises, and I was the investment guy, and I was trying to get rollover money and stuff like that. So we would run this networking group, and these guys, most of them were pretty well to do. And I'll never forget, there's one gentleman there, and he was like, he's like, one thing I've learned in my, however many number of years I've been doing what I'm doing is that on payday, you're even. You have 0 equity. They don't owe you anything. You don't owe them anything. And
right.
a lot of people get stuck into thinking like, well, I've been at this company for X number of years, and like you have some type of, or that they have some type of loyalty the organization does to you, and to your point, they don't. So for anybody out there that's hating on this overemployed thing, keep that in mind,
If anyone out there is hating it, I would love for you to write into the show, because I'm curious to see what you hate about it, but just curious.
I think for most people it would be like a jealousy thing more than anything. Maybe they're not willing to do it. Maybe they're not able to do it. Maybe they hear, well, shit, this dude's doing 2 J's and he's making over $300,000, and I'm busting my ass 60 hours a week and I'm making $50,000. Like, I don't know. I'm just making that up. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's certain people that might think that way. There's always going to be haters out there, right? But it is what it is. But yeah, if we get any feedback, absolutely, I'll share it with you. We might even have you back on the show. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the financial implications and taxes part of this.
Oh, taxes are a bitch. Oh my God, when I first started this, I had no idea. I was livid when I went and filed my taxes. So at the end of the day, right, your J1, let's say you're making $100,000, right? Your J1's taxing you like you're making $100,000. Your J2, let's say you make $100,000. Your J2 is taxing you like you make $100,000. When you file at the end of the year, you've only been taxed at like $100,000. You need to be taxed at $200,000, right? So you're going to owe in taxes. So make a note of it, save for it. Where it's also going to get more complicated is if you start doing the 1099s, right? Because they're not taking out any taxes, so you need to save for that too. And where it's going to get even more trickier, depending on the J2, J3, 4, whatever, wherever their employer's based, like I'm dealing with now, I live in one state, but that employer is not taxing me for that state. They're taxing me for their home state, right? So I'm going to have to end up paying taxes to my home state, but the state that my J2 employer is at is going to give me a refund, and I hope it's the fucking same, but it's not, because I know one state's much higher state tax rate than the other, so it's a whole thing.
Do you have somebody that does your taxes, or you do them?
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So recommendation, I guess, to anybody that is doing this overemployed or thinking about doing this overemployed thing, you need to budget in, finding a good tax advisor.
Fine. It's not like a crazy tax advisor, right? It's just when I went to my CPA and I handed him like fucking 5 W-2s and like 2 1099s, he's like, what the hell is this shit, right? He's like, why you so much, right? And then I started telling him what happened. So it's not like they have to be super knowledgeable, right? But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, right?
Right.
So I would save for those taxes at least 10% of your check, something, right? Because you're going to end up paying in taxes. And also what I learned too, and I'm not a tax expert here, so take it for whatever it's
Yeah,
worth.
no tax advice, everybody.
Right. So which one is it? I think it's Medicare.
Yeah.
So when you make $147,000 or more, they stop taking Medicare out of your check. But your J2, J3 doesn't know that you're fucking making more than $147,000, so they're going to still charge you, right?
Yep.
So you get a nice little credit from those other, when you file your taxes. So that someone helps out, and yeah.
Yeah, the taxable wage base is what you're talking about here. 2024, it looks like they bump it. It's indexed for inflation every year. It looks like this year it's 168.6. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the employer portion, the employer pays half if you're W-2, and then you pay half. But it's 6.2% for Medicare is the portion that hits that taxable wage base cap, and then the 1.45. The 6.2% is for OASDI, which is essentially the Social Security portion. The 1.45% is the Medicare, and that has no cap. But yeah, I mean, basically what we're saying is if you make over a certain amount of money, there's going to come a point where you're not supposed to be paying in more, but your other J's don't know that. So It's going to continue to happen. And to your point, that can help offset potentially some of the other tax implications from having multiple J's.
Correct. And what I've also started doing is when I fill out, if I'm on a W-2, J2 or J3, they give you that, what is that form where, you do your deductions or whatever. I actually have them take out like $150 extra in taxes.
Withholdings, yeah.
Withholdings,
yeah.
Just so it's not such a big hurt at the end of the year. And if you're on a 1099, you're self-employed, so use that to your advantage too.
Right.
So yeah.
So it sounds like, is this a means to an end, or is this like a permanent thing, you think, for most people, where they're just going to do this in perpetuity until retirement, or what?
Well, I can't speak for everyone else, but I can speak for me.
Okay.
For me, as long as I'm not like super slammed, I have a pretty good flow of things. I can get both J's done in a 40-hour work week, sometimes less. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
Why not? That's just my kind of viewpoint on it.
All right. What about some...
And I guess what's interesting too is I've learned some stuff in J2, J3 that I've taken back to J1. So you can literally learn some good skill sets, right? Especially the industries and the type of work is a little bit different. But you can kind of bring that back into your J1 and it's something good, I guess.
Yeah, but then you're teaching everybody fucking macros again. You're getting called into all these bullshit meetings like, oh, this is a great idea. We want you to be in charge of implementation, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about I've learned it from my second and third job, and I brought it over to my main job, right? So there I want to look good. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, and I've even gotten bonuses in J2 because I've done I've even gotten pay raise. Like I'm doing now. They gave me an extra $15 an hour. So yeah.
So how many years have you been doing this overemployed thing?
Good question. I want to say 2 years.
Okay, so this is still relatively new for you then.
Yeah. A little over 2 years. A little over 2 years.
Crushing it. Okay.
Yeah.
And your income probably increased multiples over that time from having just that 1J that you mentioned at the beginning of the show, paycheck to paycheck, to now we're blessing up people at the pump, right? I mean, it's just,
Right.
That's awesome.
That's what we do now.
Yeah.
We bless everyone.
What are some resources for listeners that maybe want to learn more about this, or how do they find out more?
So Reddit is a good one. YouTube is actually an interesting one. There's people on there. I've watched videos. Just type in overemployed or something, and you'll find videos of people that have done it. And there was one guy, I forgot his name, but he worked 2 J's, and he ended up actually liking his second J, and ended up quitting the first one. So there's a lot of interesting stories. Overemployed.com is another one. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You got any other stories you want to share with us?
I'm trying to think. Calling me on the spot here.
Well, it could be anything. It could be a general story. It could be a story of somebody you know that got caught, or a time you almost got caught, or I don't know, anything along those lines, or any other like crazy excuses you had to use and do multiple times. Like, I thought you just got a washer dryer. Oh, I did. Now it's my fucking microwave. Oh, last week it was your microwave. Okay, well now it's my refrigerator. Whatever.
I mean, yeah, that's happened. Where I've kind of gotten things confused. Like on J1, my main job, I started talking about a system that I use in J2.
Oh, shit.
And my boss like, what the fuck is that? And I go, what are you talking about? And he's like, you just said this. And I go, no, I don't think you heard me right. Right? Like, at the end of the day, guys, a J2, J3, if you are a person that's, what's it called? If you're lazy, like, it's not going to work for you. It's going to be hell, right?
Yeah.
If you're super structured, it's also going to be hell, right? Because things are going to get crazy, right? You're going to have people calling you sometimes, right? You might get things confused. Like a story that I had, I guess, when I traveled, right? And I went overseas, right? And I was 8 hours ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. I said to myself, okay, how the fuck am I going to do 3 J's, right? While I'm in Europe, right? And they're 8 hours, they're 8 hours, or I'm 8 hours ahead of them now, right?
Yep.
So, when it's 8 a.m. in Europe, it's 1 a.m., right, in, America, right? So I would get all my work done, but I can't send those emails, right? Because I don't want them seeing me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So, use technology, right? You have to kind of
just delay sending or whatever. Yeah.
Delay sending the emails, right? You're sending it at like midnight in fucking Europe time, right? So, yeah, you just have to kind of get creative.
Do you have ever have any issues with like VPN stuff, or if you're at home and you're working, remotely on J1, but then you have your J2 that's fully remote? Is there ever any issue there with any type of technology or VPN or help desk type shit?
Yeah, I mean, it has happened where you have those issues, but I mean, at the end of the day, I would say no. But like, but to J2, J3, you always have VPN issues. I can't connect to VPN, right? You're going to tell them that a lot of times, even though you can't, because you're trying to make up excuses for why you didn't answer a call or something.
Is there anything other than like telling other people about this that are there any other big no-nos? Like, if you do this, you're going to fuck it up. Like, if you whatever, like, you're toast.
No, you're just telling people. At the end of the day, and I kind of alluded to it before, but, right, people is what makes... A job's a job, but people is what makes a job, right? A person's going to make a job either really complicated for you or really nice for you, right? So... I mean, rule number 1, always remember that rule. It's the most important thing. The only way I would think you would get caught is if you tell someone, and or you get put on a list somewhere, right? Of the same benefits or some shit like that.
Is there ever a situation where somebody like from a J2 or J3 gets like let go and now all of a sudden they're trying to collect unemployment, but at the same time they're still getting a check?
Great question. And I didn't know this. So as a contractor, right, you're employed for the length of the contract, right? And sometimes they extend it, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to get unemployment because your contract's over, right? I obviously don't do it because it's illegal, but because I have a J1, you know what I mean? But, I mean, just so you know, you could get unemployment if you wanted to continue your checks. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to tell the listeners or share with the show?
No. I think this has been pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot. Yeah, we covered a lot of shit, but I think it's good, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in it. I know that we're in different time zones. Cube Crusher is in a different time zone. I actually invited him to come on today, but he's at J1 right now. He should be getting off here soon, but...
What a loser.
Yeah, I know. You hear that, Cube? So, all right, well, we appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. We appreciate you being premium. All right, well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you to the listeners for checking out the show. We hope you enjoyed it. This podcast has been Secrets of the Overemployed. Any feedback, feel free to write the show, text the show. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating and review. We appreciate it. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.